The sun hung mercilessly over the dusty town of Dry Creek, its rays cutting through the silence like a blade. The townsfolk gathered in the square, their eyes full of judgment and whispers sharp enough to wound. In the middle of it all stood a young woman, Ilara, her wrists bound to a wooden post. A faded sign hung around her neck that read thief. Her hair was tangled, her face streaked with tears and dust, and yet, despite her humiliation, her eyes burned with defiance. "Please let me go," she cried, her voice cracking as the crowd murmured and turned away. No one moved. No one dared to question the sheriff's decision. The law was harsh in Dry Creek, and mercy was a luxury long forgotten. But from the far edge of the crowd, one man didn't look away. A tall cowboy, his hat pulled low, his boots coated in red dust, and a shadow in his eyes that spoke of a life lived hard. Rhett Callahan. He was a rancher, a man who'd lost too much and trusted too little. Yet something about the girl's voice, its trembling strength, cut straight through him. As the sheriff spat tobacco and turned his back, Rhett stepped forward. "Sheriff," he said, his voice steady but low, "mind telling me what she did?" The sheriff squinted, his tone cold. "Caught her sneaking bread from the general store. Town's law says thieves get marked." Rhett's jaw tightened. "A loaf of bread?" "A crime's a crime," the sheriff barked. The cowboy said nothing for a long moment. He looked at the trembling girl, her wrists raw, her lips chapped, and something inside him broke. Without another word, he reached forward and untied the rope. The sheriff's hand shot to his holster, but Rhett's glare stopped him cold. "You want to shoot me for showing mercy? Go ahead," he said quietly. The crowd gasped as the rope fell from Ilara's wrists. She stumbled, nearly falling, but Rhett caught her by the shoulders. "Easy," he murmured. "You're safe now." The sheriff growled but turned away, unwilling to start trouble with a man like Rhett. The crowd began to disperse, whispers following them like ghosts. Rhett took off his coat and wrapped it around Ilara's shoulders. "You hungry?" he asked. She nodded faintly, unable to meet his eyes. "Come on then," he said, guiding her toward his horse. They rode in silence across the plains, the wind brushing against the tall grass as dusk began to fall. When they reached his ranch, quiet stretch of land framed by the red horizon, Rhett dismounted and helped her down. He led her inside, sat her by the fire, and handed her a bowl of stew. She ate slowly, her hands still shaking. "Thank you," she whispered. He shrugged, leaning against the wall. "Don't thank me. Just tell me why." She looked up, her eyes glassy but fierce. "My little brother's sick. He hasn't eaten in 2 days. I begged the storekeeper for help. He spat in my face. I just took one loaf." Rhett's chest tightened. He'd seen plenty of cruelty, but somehow hearing it in her trembling voice felt unbearable. For a moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled, and outside the coyotes howled to the moon. Then Rhett knelt beside her. "You did what you had to do. Don't let anyone make you ashamed of that." Tears welled in her eyes. "But they called me a thief." He shook his head. "They don't know the kind of hunger that eats at your soul." Then, softer, he asked, "Where's your brother now?" "In a shack by the river," she whispered. Rhett stood, grabbed his hat, and said, "Let's go get him." By midnight, they reached a small wooden hut, half collapsed and silent except for the faint coughing inside. Ilara ran to the door, calling, "Sam!" A frail boy looked up from a pile of blankets, his eyes wide with disbelief. Rhett watched as she held him, tears streaming freely now, not from fear but relief. Without hesitation, Rhett lifted the boy into his arms and carried him to the horse. "He's coming with us," he said. Back at the ranch, Rhett's cook made broth, and Ilara watched as Sam ate, smiling weakly for the first time in weeks. Days turned into weeks. The boy healed. Laughter returned to the walls of the old ranch. And for the first time in years, Rhett felt something stir inside him. Hope. Ilara worked hard, tending the animals in the garden. But no matter how much she did, she always thanked him softly at the end of each day. One evening, as the sun dipped below the mountains, Rhett found her by the corral, watching the horses run free. "You think about leaving?" he asked. She looked at him, her face glowing in the fading light. "I don't know where I'd go." He took a step closer, his voice low. "Then stay. You and your brother. There's room here, if you'll have it." She blinked, stunned. "Why would you do that for me?" He hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Because I know what it's like to need someone to untie you." Her breath caught, and for the first time she smiled without fear. The ranch that once echoed with loneliness now sang with life. The girl once shamed in the square had found her dignity. Again, not in riches or reputation, but in kindness and courage. And as Rhett watched her laugh with her brother under the golden sky, he whispered to himself, "Sometimes saving someone else is the only way to save yourself."